In today's episode, I sit down with Georgie Holt, CEO of FlightStory and co-founder of FlightStory Studio. This is the company building the future of media for the creator age alongside Steven Bartlett.
Our belief at FlightStory in the media side is the next billion-dollar media companies will be scaled out of singular human IP.
Georgie reveals the philosophy behind the explosive growth of Diary of a CEO.
Rigorous experimentation and commitments to the 1%. Testing and experimenting with marginal improvements, marginal changes to get data back. We did a calculation on last year and it was way over 1,000 experiments that were run.
And she gives a glimpse into how AI is already transforming their workflow.
I think we built 48 tools that saved us 7 years of time.
This is an ambitious company, a defining moment for creator-led media, and an episode you absolutely do not want to miss. So what is FlightStory? What are you building today?
FlightStory is a media and investment company. We co-founded it with Steven Bartlett. A lot of people will probably know who he is. Iconic host of the Diary of a CEO, the second biggest podcast globally, obviously very well-known and recognized investor and entrepreneur. And we met him about 2 years ago, following on from a LinkedIn post where he said he was looking to build a podcast network and was anyone out there who would be interested in doing that with him. And what began as sort of a podcast media and technology company built on the blueprint of scaling the Diary of a CEO and the methodologies and technology that had been used to do that has become a media company which really is about elevating human stories that inspire progress. That is the fundamental function of our media business. And we really want to build the future of media for the creator age. And we'll definitely get into this, I think, about what I mean by that, but and what we think that potential and opportunity is. But how we see it with the creator age, or certainly how I see it, I've been in media a very long time now. I'm coming up to, I think, my 25th anniversary in media, which is, I think, a genuine lifetime in this industry. And I've seen unbelievable transformation from print to digital, digital to social, social to video, and the decline of legacy and the rise of the creator. And our belief at FlightStory in the media side is the next billion-dollar media companies will be scaled out of singular human IP, or more sort of obviously known as creator-led brands. So that's what we're building, and we are moving away from calling ourselves a podcast company to a media company that scales creator-led brands that help people pursue a more fulfilling life.
Really excited to get into it, and also to hear about the power of LinkedIn there.
Yes.
But in your words, how would you define a creator-led media company in 2025?
It's a great question. I think it's where content becomes a company. And a lot of people out there are creating content. A lot of people are doing that with some success. But what we kind of find is there comes a moment where, whilst we talk about the legacy media industry sort of being in catastrophic decline and sort of trying to figure out what's next and where they go from here, the creator economy is also broken. And that's because many of them rely on AdSense dollars. They're sprinting to keep still just in terms of producing more and more content to try and drive more and more views. The brand deals are maybe small and disparate. It's hard to connect all of the pieces together. They may be bouncing between agents and publishers and strategists and marketers and people who are all kind of coming into the ecosystem to help them perhaps expand, but not into one cohesive flywheel and system and sort of creating full infrastructure around them. So I think it's this moment in time where content can start to look and feel like a company, where you're maybe employing more people, you're looking to expand beyond potentially just producing on a singular channel. You're looking for decentralized distribution. You're looking at products, merchandise, events, community activations, and you're starting to do and feel and experience the activities that are brand like. And I feel very passionately that there is a lot of disproportionate difficulty in the creator economy right now. And we are building this company, this sort of this future of the creator ages, to sort of put this infrastructure from sort of media experts into what we think is this kind of creator-led media moment.
Makes absolute sense. And when you meet a creator, how do you evaluate whether they're a potential million or even billion-dollar business?
Again, a great question. It's about having the founder mentality. And we're very lucky to be connected to and to work with lots of very high-profile individuals who've built very credible careers in entertainment and in media. But there's something very special about a creator, content creator, or media talent who think about the media side of their business like a founder. And that means that they have to be obsessed, absolutely obsessed with what they're building. They have to have an absolute bias for action. They have to be thinking about the commercial economics of what they're building, not just the creative side of the business. They have to be extremely detailed around what they want to achieve, where they want to go, the fact that they will be contributing to it massively themselves. Like, it's not just they sort of turn up, record and leave. It's them being present in every conversation and every part of the ecosystem, just like Steven is. Steven is present, engaged, and driving results in his media business and the Diary of a CEO in such a way that I've never experienced before. His entrepreneurial vision, his founder mentality is translated into media. So we have to see those same behaviors in our creators. So much so, we built a culture test for people joining our company. And it really is finding out how aligned you are to our way of working. In an entrepreneurial company led by someone like Steven, surrounded by lots of other founders, both as an investment portfolio, but also in the media side, we have to know that you're going to thrive in that environment and you're going to really enjoy it, because it's not typical, but it is extremely worthwhile pursuit. So we do this culture test just to understand whether there's an alignment. Are you going to enjoy it here? Is there something for you? We've actually started to do that with creators now as well, to see how much of the alignment with our business, our values and our behaviors is coming through in the creators. And we've just signed a creator that we're going to announce in 2 weeks who scored like 98% on the culture test. And we're like, well, this is such an interesting indication that this person is going to not only thrive, but enjoy how we do things, because it isn't typical. It's very lean in, it's very active, and it's really about pursuit of this audacious goal that we think we can build billion-dollar media companies with creator-led brands, and that takes obsession.
It's fascinating to hear about that test you have. How do you think about managing the key person risk, though, when you're investing into a creator?
Yeah. It's something we think about all the time. It's something we're highly aware of in our company. When we do our risks on ops on any sort of strategic document, it's always key person, key man risk. How would we operate our business and our company should something happen to one of the creators that we work with? Again, that's why we're very specific on who we want to work with and why we choose them. So we use a lot of data in that decisioning. But ultimately, this is where the creator must be building a brand and a media brand, something that could and can, in distribution across short form and long form, community and events, can have the principles of that creator live beyond the person themselves. So we think about what are the key pillars, what are the brand codes, is the experience that an audience will have with this at every touch point, that should the creator not be there, they're still having an interaction with a brand that has those key principles and persona of that creator built within it. So we're really looking towards like a media brand execution. The Diary of a CEO, we need to talk, begin again. The line, whilst they're creator led, the brand codes are extremely strong and they should have residuals that pay in all different environments, whether you're watching something in short form, long form, or going to a community event. So we're really looking at what is the brand we can build around this iconic persona, which their principles can then live on, just in case.
And I know Stephen uses a lot of data. How do you use data to identify creators in what you're doing?
Yeah, we're building tools, actually. There's a great quote by Alex Hormozy, and he says that founders and builders, they build for 3 reasons. One, the first reason, which has probably brought me to this seat, is you're professionally very good at something. You've built a deep skill set, and you're able to then start to build companies and tools and services for others because you've learned a skill and a craft over a very long period of time. There's people who are purpose and passion builders, who they're just deeply in love with an idea or an opportunity, and they want to build businesses and products, tools and services that kind of speak to that passion. Then there's pain builders, people who are experiencing deep pain with a product, service, health concern, health condition, lifestyle choice, and they build to reduce the pain that they feel in themselves, because something is difficult when it shouldn't be. And Steve's a pain builder. So he builds through pain. So he'll be like, this is frustrating. This is too slow. There's too much human effort going into this when I want human beings spending time on complex human problems, building networks, relationships, opportunities, brainstorming for the future, moving ahead at pace, and you're solving this sort of complex, difficult in the moment problem. And I think I can build a tool for that. I think I can build technology that solves that for us faster, or certainly gets us a significant part of that problem solved, and then the human beings can come and debate and discuss. So what we now have is a tool called Creator Radar. which is taking out the human bias, because quite often that's what happens when you're making decisions, to give us the right signals in the noise that will help us understand whether we think a creator is at a high potential moment. And that was actually built on the technology of a tool called Guest Radar, which is finding the optimum guests for the Diary of a CEO and all of our new shows without using human bias, by using data. Because the reality is, and the truth of it is, the guest choice, probably, I kind of think about where does it start and where does it end when you're producing something like a podcast or a show or a piece of IP like this. And it starts with the guest. It starts with that choice. So that is a seismic decision you make twice a week on the Diary of a CEO. And when you get, quote unquote, the right guest into the seat, they can have a transformative impact, not just on the success of the show in terms of views, subscribers, revenue. It can have a profound impact on the audience. It can genuinely change someone's life. And we have thousands and thousands and thousands of emails and messages to say that that exact thing has happened. It can also transform the guest's life as well. I think Daniel Priestley was widely quoted. He's been on the Diary of a CEO 2 to 3 times now, and he said he would have paid £20 million to go on the Diary of a CEO for the impact, the positive impact it's had on his business. So we have to almost remove human bias from that decision, because we know this unbelievable impact it has. So we built a tool called Guest Radar that is searching the internet, searching every channel we can possibly pull into this API, to pull into this tool, to tell us what the potential outcome of a guest or a human being would be on the show. And it gives it a rating of potentiality and a percentage score. And we can see that someone is going to have a very high potential impact based on lots of different signals that we're looking for. And we have some unbelievable examples, particularly in the health and science sector, where people aren't as renowned. They aren't as high profile. They don't have huge Instagram followings. They don't have huge sort of creator-led brands that we can sort of look at and say, well, that's got scale. They'll bring an audience with them. They are, I think we've got someone on the Diary of a CEO today who has 600 followers on Instagram.
Very different.
And it's because the data signals have told us that this person coming on has extremely high potential of being a transformative guest. So I'm so interested to see whether someone with such a small foothold in where we traditionally said are the important areas, which is a high social media presence, will perform.
Wow, I love that passion that you described there and the impact. I actually know Daniel Priestley. I met him about 10 years ago, and I've seen his sort of rapid rise, particularly in the last year. Can you talk us through your portfolio and some of the creators that you're working with at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. We are taking a very curated approach to the creators that we work with. I've worked with other companies where it's a scale play. It's about signing as many creators or shows or pieces of IP to your network that you possibly can, hedging your bets, scaling what you can scale. Then you have a long tail that quite often are sort of disappointed in the servicing they may get because they've got a mismatch of expectations. We're taking a very curated approach. The ambition is to have around 15 to 20 creator-led brands by the end of 2030. And the reason we're making that choice is we want people to have an unbelievable experience when they work with FlightStory, that it's incredibly intentional, it's incredibly well-staffed, very well-serviced, that they have essentially an entire team of maybe 20 to 30 to 50 people. I mean, the Diary of a CEO has about 50 people working on it now. That's the scale that we know we can get to. Steven, as the Diary of a CEO, we're talking about that being easily $150 million, $200 million brand today. And the projections that will have taken us into the future, it will have $1 billion valuation on its own within the sort of next 2 to 3 years. So, that's the opportunity ahead of them. So 20 creators. I like to kind of think, and this is where my legacy experience comes to play. And I mean that with love as well. Legacy to me also means that someone who's had an unbelievable tenure and has delivered unbelievable results. And it's something that we all admire and look up to. I kind of look at it like Condé Nast, where you have this you just know it's Condé Nast the moment you touch, feel, see, or engage with any of that content. And each brand has a unique perspective on the world, but the aesthetic and the premium nature of that brand is very similar. So that if you're in Wired or Vanity Fair, GQ or Vogue, they're a Condé Nast brand. And that's the intention, that we're building the next Condé Nast, or we're building the next Disney, as sort of Steven is doing with Steven.com, and his pursuit of that is that these are very trusted, well understood, well curated brands versus bringing on hundreds and hundreds of channels and just sort of hedging the bets like almost like a fund and sort of seeing which one will be successful over time.
You've started working with creators. Are there particular patterns that show up amongst the ones that are successful?
They have all been successful. So the benchmark we had, I mean, when we met Steve the first time, when we were talking about launching the network before it was FlightStory and previous to that Flight Studio, it was the great experiment. Was what the team had done at the Diary of a CEO, this unbelievable achievement of scaling this brand to the levels it had been done through ruthless experimentation, commitments to the 1%, commitments to data decisioning, commitments to killing the guesswork. That's one of our mantras in the business, and the commitment to not being romantic about what had got them to the point and how it's going to get them into the future, repeatable. Could you repeat it? Or was it something that could only have been done in that moment in time with that particular team in that context? So we're always benchmarking ourselves against where the Diary of a CEO was on the journey of our new shows. So that's the qualification we use. And we need to talk with Paul C. Brunson, which I think is now, it began as a relationships podcast, but it's transformed into, I think, the iconic talk show of our time, where very high profile people are going on and sharing personal stories and personal journeys of progress like they haven't shared anywhere else in the world yet. To give you an indication, we did a record with Kerry Katona, who, for anyone not knowing who she is when she listens, she's like an iconic pop star in the UK and has sort of moved into, I'd say, sort of celebrity culture and reality TV. She did a 9-hour podcast record with Paul. 9 hours. And he sat with her without judgment, curious, interested, empathetic, and she shared things she'd never shared anywhere. So we've created this unbelievable space for human connection with Paul. His show is growing 9 times faster than the Diary of a CEO was at that moment in time. So we're about 14 months into that show now. 9 times faster, 600 million views across long form and short form, millions of followers across YouTube and social. He's about to go back to the US because he is American. He's going back to the US to do a big recording sprint there. He's going to be on a very high profile American TV show. So his sort of journey is exploding again. And what I love so much about Paul is he is a man like I am in my lifetime in the second act of life. You know, he's not 25 and sort of the next hot thing. You know, he is in his, I think, late 40s, similar to me, and has found, again, this opportunity to bring his expertise, to bring his brand to a global audience. So it's not about age. It's not about you being, you know, the next big TikToker. It's about us having great data points because we have unbelievable data from you being a guest on the show. Like any investment fund, this is someone we want to invest in because we've done the right diligence about who you are and what we think you can be.
Got it. And how do you build the right teams and infrastructure around the creators that you're investing in?
Yeah. I think of teams as sort of building blocks to an outcome. And we've spent a long time thinking about what our business is in 2030 and what building blocks we need from a team point of view to get us to that ultimate goal, which is to have $1 billion valuation and to be reaching 1 billion people globally with the content that we create, and for that content to be inspiring progress in the people it does reach. We think about the building blocks. You need those foundational building blocks. You need those innovation blocks. You need those audience and community driving blocks. And you need those revenue driving blocks. Because when we think about the major levers in our business, innovation underpins everything: experimentation, data, R&D, building tools, MVPs, and products that we think will fast track our success. But ultimately, we have to be a business that focuses on the audience first, that consumer first. Because if you understand their emotional and functional needs, how to reach them in an impactful way, where they are, how to grow them, pulling every lever you can for growth, what actually happens is the impact of your content increases. And by design, the revenue increases as well. So ultimately, at the top, there will always be a revenue portion of the business that we're driving towards, but it does come down to the innovation, experimentation, the foundational blocks, and the audience sort of being that largest sort of set of blocks, from short form, long form, community, brand building, brand world building, marketing, product, e-com. So like that kind of centralized system is very, very, very much dedicated to the audience, and the content is in service of that.
And you talk about putting the audience first there. When you're working with a creator, how do you decide whether it's a podcast or a book or some other product that you're going to launch with?
We begin with the long form. So what's the long form idea? Because ultimately, the foundational belief we have is that if you create incredible content, your distribution opportunity is limitless. Because if you create great long form, your ability to decentralize that distribution and to use short form as not only a tool for marketing and connectivity with your audience, it also can drive revenue and opportunity in the long term. It does come down to that long form idea to begin with. Does this person have enough expertise, interest, curiosity? Does the audience have enough interest, curiosity, and ability to carve time out to spend time with this creator about this type of conversation? Because we are asking them to find time for us. And I think there was a really interesting statistic that I saw come out of one of the recent podcast reports that about 25% of audiences who enjoy podcasts only consume the short form content. Now, that's fine. And I love that because it means we've got this massive opportunity to build short form IP out of our long form IP. I always use the analogy of James Corden on The Late Show. You might not remember him for being on The Late Show, but you certainly remember Carpool Karaoke. And that's a piece of short form IP that has come out of a long form piece of content. Is that the long form actually has to be really good. Because if you're building audiences outside of that long form and into short form channels, you have to have enough to be working for to make that powerful. And to be honest, the attention, the time you have to get someone's attention is much shorter because you are in a short form environment. So it does start with the long form. And what we now have is as a way to engage creators into our flywheel and into our ecosystem without necessarily starting with the long form. It is the biggest investment. It is the most amount of time that we dedicate to building in the business. Because again, it's that belief that long form nuanced human conversation is the thing that inspires progress in human beings, and it can actually help you pursue something more fulfilling yourself. Is that we can sign people to our Flight Books division, which is our publishing division, which means that, again, we get to understand whether an audience is interested in a topic in depth, which is a book that could then translate into a long form piece of IP. You can sign to work with us potentially commercially or help us scale your social media, which can lead to rapid monetization and the increase in the value of the IP that you're scaling. You can work with us from a community and events point of view. So we're sort of having these like smaller, we call it dating, moving in, and getting married. So that's how we talk about it in our business. Sometimes you need to date first just to see whether this is something you both enjoy. Then you might take it the next step, you move in, which means you deepen the relationship, and ultimately you get married, which is kind of that full service of our business. But there's lots of different ways that we can bring creators on board, but so much of it is data driven. From the very beginning, we had a uniquely unfair advantage that Steve had had hundreds and hundreds of people on his show, and every single episode and every piece of short form content that had gone out to kind of to build the audience around that episode gave us thousands of data points. So we could see what we thought this person might do ahead of them doing it, which is a gift when you're making investment decisions with creators.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that example of James Corden there. Now, Diary of a CEO is like the second biggest podcast in the world. What specifically have you learned about scaling that you're applying to the creators that you work with?
Kill the guesswork, experimentation, rigorous experimentation and commitments to the 1%. The most powerful thing anyone can say in this company, including me, including Steven, including Christiana, our co-founder, is I don't know. I don't know. So when someone comes in and says, should we test this guest, this format? Should we go and sign this creator to Flight Books? Should we use this prop? Should we be talking about this in this episode? The answer is, I don't know. The answer is, we will experiment and test. So I think we are running upwards of, we did a calculation on last year and it was way over 1,000 experiments that were run in our business across the course of the year, testing everything from the hook in a trailer to the text on a caption, to the positioning of a piece of content in the long form. Steve built, again, a sort of pain process of, you can do all of this rigorous experimentation and testing on a piece of long form content. You can edit to a point you believe it's perfect. But ultimately you sort of hit publish, you then just have to publish it, which is definitely an entrepreneurial spirit, which is you have to ship the product and you have to get data from the audience or your consumer to understand whether that product is going to be fit for market or has product market fit. But he was frustrated that was something that happened after the fact. So he has built a tool which we use regularly called pre-watch testing, which is an attention graph of about 5 to 7,000 people who are in a controlled group who watch the episode before it goes live, and it uses lots of nice software to understand attention on the episode. So we can see an attention graph before we publish, which fundamentally helps inform what the trailer structure might look like, what the episode structure looks like. Are we seeing good attention at the end of the episode so people have stayed engaged? It's not this sort of declining or depreciating attention over time. We're actually seeing attention variables. Actually, everyone dropped off in the middle, but they all came back in the end. So we can see that perhaps the middle's a bit soft. Again, it doesn't mean that we're editing for personal bias, because my perspective on an episode and your perspective on an episode, Ian, we might be interested in really different things, and then we edit for our own perspective, and that's a really dangerous thing to do, and we see it in media all the time. You edit for your own perspective, not for the audience's attention or the audience's interest. So it means that we edit with that sort of algorithmic thought process in mind, and we talk about algorithmic editing all the time, and that starts not just in the guest booking, but in the research brief that any of our hosts will receive, as we've done days and days of research, looking at every possible data signal, trend, piece of analysis that we could do that would help us map the audience's attention and current search trends or social trends or GPT trends, like what does GPT surface when you're searching for particular topics, that our content is gearing towards those outcomes. So we know that, for example, when one of our hosts is interviewing someone about something like dopamine, they all know what dopamine is. They all know what the impact of dopamine is and why it can be excellent for humans, but also can have a damaging impact if it's triggered over the long term. So they'll say, what is dopamine? Because we know one of the key search terms is what is dopamine? And we're then servicing the audience's needs. So again, thinking about the audience first is so critical to the edit, to the tools that we're building, because ultimately you want them to get the maximum value out of the time they have, quite frankly, gifted you of a week where you're asking them to spend an hour and a half to 2 hours with you to get value from that experience. And if we lose sight of that at any point and aren't data driven in that decisioning, we aren't doing what we want this business to do, which is to reach 1 billion people by 2030.
Of that focus there. And do you think with these creator-led media companies, any of them can outgrow the creator and live on without them moving forward?
What do you mean? Can you just give me a little bit more context on that question?
So could Diary of a CEO exist without Steven in the future?
Yes. And the reason I'm saying that is not because we want that to happen, it's because of AI and the tools and technology that we're now using in the Diary of a CEO. When I think Steve first saw the tools coming through VO and the sort of the video tools, when it was quite clear that we'd sort of, I guess, jump to chapter where it is extremely human. It is quite clearly quite difficult to tell in some cases now from what we see, even in this, like Stephen and our creators quite often experience sort of that scam attack where it looks and sounds like them and they're talking about products and investments, and it's absolutely not them. I think when we started to get serious about these tools, and as soon as they landed, our innovation team, FlightX, were like straight on the tools and practicing. I think what he saw, he was like, wow, I always thought I needed to be in the chair, but maybe I don't. And so it's a lot of fun at that point in time. And you start to sort of play with the potential. But what it did unlock was format extension and expansion. How can we build the Diary of a CEO outside of the core project, the core product, which is the podcast, which requires Stephen to be there, to build out new formats and IP that potentially goes and reaches new audiences where there is minimal involvement from Stephen, potentially just from the human lens, which is still so important, like scripting, storytelling, making sure that he's extremely happy with the final edit. But you are going to see us start to expand outside that core IP using AI, which means that the creators can live on way beyond just the core product or the core format that they're building.
And can you tell us how you're using AI at the moment in
It's,
FlightStory?
it's everywhere, all the time. We're obsessed with the potential of AI. We ran an AI competition in the summer, so it had been about 4 or 5 months ago now, where we tasked every single team, including myself. My task was to make myself redundant from my job using AI, which was a fantastic experience. And I fast tracked my learning and ability to use these tools and to understand where my effort was best deployed. And it is in the human EQ side of things, that it isn't in scheduling and data and analysis. So we tasked every single team in the business to build AI tools that they thought could not only disrupt, but advance their teams, their potential. I think we built 48 tools that saved us 7 years of time, particularly because, again, time is our most precious resource. It's the one thing we can't turn back and we can't do again, but we can certainly make it more efficient. And we immediately saw about $1.2 to $1.3 million of cost efficiency that we could find in the business. And that wasn't about reducing headcount or people. It was about time to task, time to delivery, making ourselves more effective and efficient, meaning that human beings could do the really important human work. They're not doing the work that, honestly, tools can do for you now. So we all got so behind that opportunity and the building of those tools. But what I loved so much about it is it reminded me of the power of a breakthrough in a company. And quite often in business, particularly when you don't have rigor around experimentation, and particularly when you don't have commitment to the 1%, particularly when you don't have an absolute obsession with the future, disruption, killing the romance in your business, is that you don't give people an opportunity to do something really, really fucking hard, and then for them to break through and learn something and to build something for themselves, and to then find that what they've built is successful, and to also then help their capacity to be better in the future. And for my sort of 25 years, I started with a desk phone and a Rolodex. Like, I had no technology. I was 27 before I posted my first post on Facebook. And honestly, it was in the third person. So, when you get those like posts back and it's like, Georgie is thinking, you're like, oh my God. I was 31 before I had a front facing camera. So I lived a giant part of my life with no tools or technology. But I had this obsession and curiosity about media, and it's how it made me feel as a human being, what I felt I could do in that business and build a career there. What I saw again 25 years later building these tools is these people were still so obsessed and curious about how they could improve media. And I think that that's why I've been addicted to media for 25 years, is that often media, because it goes through transformative forces, economic, social, cultural, global, political forces that will force change in that industry. Often it's thought that media had to change. It has to change. It has to innovate because it's dying. Actually, the reality is that media innovates because it wants to. And you get a lot of innovative, very creative people who choose this channel or choose this industry to build something better. And my belief is I want to leave it better than I found it. And whether that takes 25 years or 100 years, that's the thing I want to really do. And it reminded me when we were building these AI tools is that when you give people an opportunity to have a breakthrough, it can have a transformative impact on your business. So we talk about AI in every meeting, from board level to weekly stand-ups to future strategies for 2026. What are we doing with innovation, FlightX, R&D? And AI is at the heart of all of that, because I think it just lets people be more human. And the more you use the tools, the more you play with them, the more breakthroughs you have, the more confidence you build. So I think if anyone has cognitive dissonance around using AI in their company, is that is the biggest signal that you absolutely have to jump in. And it is a personal responsibility as you as a leader or contributor to that company to get on those tools, to play with them, to break them, and to break through them yourself, and to build a really good skill set around AI for the future.
It's great to hear about how you're embracing it. What do you think about AI creators?
I'm very interested. I'm curious because I have cognitive dissonance around it. I was very interested in the Tilly Norwood story, and I saw someone present on it on Tuesday, and it caused a lot of noise in the industry. We all paid a lot of attention. I think we're some way away from what they were presenting. I think what we do with any AI content that we're putting into the world is we did a test with 100 CEOs, which was an AI generated version of the Diary of a CEO, where Steven was telling stories of the greatest CEOs of all time. It was all delivered with AI tooling. Steve worked on the script, but that was sort of the human aspect, and the human aspect only is the audience ready for it? That's the other piece of the puzzle, is that with any innovation and any technological transformation, it sort of happens in phases, that you'll when we look at social media, when we look at the internet, and all the way back in the day, I can remember I used the intranet. Like I remember being at the Mail Online, when they launched Mail Online, and all these people saying it'll never work. No one, it's newspaper, it's print. This audience will never adapt and never adopt to this technology. It was the same as, when the new social platforms launched, we're like, why would we ever come off Facebook and go and use another platform? This is all, too new and too fast. It comes in stages. And I think there's of a media loving audience, there's probably about 10 to 20% of them who are absolutely ready right now. I'm happy to just get great content. I'm excited about its potential, that I can, weave storytelling in a direction that I would like it to go. I might have some control in the story myself. I might get introduced to new characters and people and ideas using these new tools and technologies. And then the rest of the audiences gradually start to transfer into that way of thinking as it becomes ubiquitous. We may be 5 years away, 10 years away, a year away. And I think the pace of change is what's the most interesting thing. But I think it's very interesting because I have some cognitive dissonance around it, because I'm not sure whether I'm completely ready. So therefore, I'm insanely curious, and I want to know everything about how the decision was made. Why did you make that choice? What data did you use to make that choice, to make Tilly Norwood look the way she did? Was that data driven? Was that human driven? So I'm insanely curious and have a huge appetite to understand more. And I think in time, this will be something that will be as normalized as a WhatsApp call, a Slack message, logging onto Netflix and watching your favorite show, and that might just be AI generated.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. It's just a bit uncomfortable at the moment, right? Um, for creators that are listening, what advice would you give them about building a media company?
That's a great question. If you're not obsessed about your data, the most important thing you can do is to dedicate at least 2 to 3 hours a day obsessing about your data metrics. Then deciding which lever or which metric you want to try and move, because it will be unique to each creator. It may be about engagement or views or follower count or testing new formats. What is the metric that you want to make? It may be revenue. And start experimenting and testing on moving that particular metric. Now, it's really important to understand what an experiment actually is. That isn't changing 50 things at once in a week. It's quite slow and it is rigorous, and you have to have a hypothesis going into having an experiment. If I change the shape of my text or the color of my text or the positioning of my text on my caption, am I going to see an increase in engagement or views on my short form? If I change the hook, if I do multiple hooks in my content, if I stop talking about the thing I've been talking about and test a new idea, committing to that idea for a long period of time and looking at that data, I think is the thing that some creators are not doing rigorously enough. And because they enjoy the creative side, they enjoy the process of creation. But the process of creation is a process of experimentation, and a process of experimentation is data driven. So that would be my main piece of advice, is that testing and experimenting with marginal improvements, marginal changes to get data back will compound so consistently over time that, yes, it might feel slow in the next 6 months, but the next 6 months after that, you may see rapid increase in metrics that have mattered to you. And to do that almost as a religious practice, that it happens every day at the same time, in the same way, in the same environment, so you can start to be in the lab with your content. And that would be my piece of advice, because if and when you start to get to a scale that your content can turn into a company, you have an unbelievable data warehouse to share with people who might want to come and invest, might want to come and buy brand partnerships, or want to invest in you because they think that you've got potential and they want to be with you for the longer term. You might want to come to FlightStory. And the first thing we're going to do is to say to you, data warehouse, what have you got? What's in your data room? What is every metric that we care about saying to you? What are you doing to improve them? Are they going down? Are they going up? Those are the questions you'll be asked. So that would be my number one piece of advice, is if you aren't doing it, do it. If you are doing it, check you're not doing too much. check that the experiments have got good hypotheses, check that you're tracking the metrics that are changing. If you're doing that too, keep going. If you're doing that and it's not working and you've been doing it for 6 to 12 months, are you giving enough value for strangers? Because that's the other big question. And quite often when people are thinking about starting to build personal brands and become creators themselves, the great advice that I have had and we talk about all the time is, what are the top 3 questions that people ask you most in your professional career, in your personal life? And in there are your 3 major content pillars. So they're the 3 content pillars that you should build a brand around. And that might be professional, personal, somewhere in between. They're the 3 pillars of your editorial brand. Then start to build out those, test which one is having the biggest impact on the audience, and then you can get back into experimentation and testing. So that's my piece of advice for anyone who is thinking about doing this or getting stuck or wants to become sort of the next big media brand.
Great advice there. Well, Georgie, it's been fascinating to learn about what you're building. One final question before we go. What does FlightStory look like in 5 years' time?
We will have 20 creator-led brands that will be having a profound impact on the audiences they reach. We will have a billion-dollar valuation and be reaching 1 billion people. And we will have a team and a company culture that has moved mountains, that has pursued an audacious goal in a highly ambitious way, has had the climb of a lifetime to get there. And whether this is a chapter they continue for another decade or the chapter that they have had that takes them on to their next big thing, I want it to be the most important chapter that they've ever had in my life. And I'm in complete and utter service of my team, of this goal. And I will do everything in my power to make it happen for them, for the creators, and for the audiences we hope to reach.
Amazing, very inspiring. Well, thank you for sharing the journey, and I'm excited to follow it.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thanks for listening to The Business of Creators. I've got some big guests coming, so be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Now, if this is your first time listening, I'm Ian Shepherd, co-founder and co-CEO of Electrify Video Partners. We invest in large, established creator businesses to accelerate their growth. For creators, that means 3 things. First, the chance to take money off the table today. Second, the expertise and a team to scale your business faster. And third, a creative transition plan, enabling you to step back or exit the business altogether. We've raised over $100 million and made 10 investments, including YouTube channels Veritasium, Fern, and Fireship. If you're a creator thinking about the next stage, please get in touch to find out more.